I want to talk to you about my friend Charlie Crawford. He's a 10-time NFR qualifier.
Charlie Crawford, time to just shake it out and win. Got it on him fast, set
there
up.
We are.
Here's a dead
nice
money
run.
lead. You betcha 3-8.
That's an absolute perfect run. Timing was perfect from the time the first swing is up. He's got the control. Charlie made it happen by being timed up with his horse with the steer, and being able to not just rope, but to pick that steer's head up without changing the momentum for the heeler at all.
We know his beautiful wife, Jackie, all three of their beautiful children, the founder of the Liberty and Loyalty Foundation, which this year will exceed $1 million raised for military and first responders. I've said it 1,000 times. Charlie, it's time to rope, nod and ride, whip and spur. I want to welcome you to the Charlie Crawford Podcast. Let's ride.
Hello, everybody. I'm in Napa, Idaho, and I'm really excited to get over here. I just got done doing a clinic. One of my good buddies over here, Todd Hornbuckle, call sign Horny. He is a retired captain, U.S. Navy. He's currently first officer for Delta Airlines. He's a pilot for Delta Airlines. And so, Todd, thanks for being on, man.
Dude, what an honor.
I appreciate it.
Well, it truly is an honor to be here.
Good sticking today.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that.
Your daughter did kind of.
She outroped me.
She did some work.
Let's be honest.
She outroped everybody. Almost.
Well, yeah. And I tell you, as a dad, you know, I joke with one of my buddies, like, if she beats me at a jackpot, I think I'm going to take away her phone or something. I mean, what do you? But really, that's a dad goal. If your daughter's roping better than you, I mean,
absolutely.
If you're not happy about that, I probably
it was fun.
Wrong.
Man, what a good clinic though. The weather was great for it. Man, great group. Yeah. JJ Griffin, he's got a good circle around him. Man, that was a fun clinic.
Yeah, he does. He has our Tuesday, Thursday night rope practices, and he keeps it. It's a good environment to learn in, to train in. You know, he's got music going, but also enough seriousness that you can train. And I couldn't be more grateful for him. And he does. He's got I think he's got one of the nicest private, facilities that I've been to. It's great. It's a really a treat to be able to rope there.
So you being a fighter pilot, what is your horses' names?
Okay, so my horses' names are Iceman and Hollywood. Just random names.
Just random.
Just
nothing to do with
drew them out of a hat.
Nothing
really.
to do with Top Gun.
And and they act. It's funny though. There's a book, How to Think Like a Horse, Grant Gallagher, that I love, and he has this theory that if you name a horse Craphead, he's gonna eventually live up to that name. I don't know if it's voodoo or something, but I tell you, they really our Hollywood is. I mean, he's pretty. He kind of acts like he knows it. He's got a lot of personality, and he's fun. And
Madeline did some sticking on Hollywood. Yeah, she did work.
Yeah, she did.
So now, Iceman. Now you were into a bidding war with him when you got him purchased.
So
correct?
A good buddy of mine, Craig Devereaux, he runs the Pool House Horse Sale in Newcastle, Wyoming, and they have some great horses. And so I went there, and he tells me the next day. So it comes down. I'm bidding on the phone, and I'm not sure if I'm getting. And he calls me the next day. He's like, "Nice chop. You know who you were bidding against?" I'm like, "Who?" He goes, "The governor." I'm like, "What?" The governor of South Dakota, Kristi Noem. And so the next year, she and she's a really cool lady. I was so honored to get to meet her, and they're lucky to have her as a governor.
She's done a good job up there.
Yeah,
really good
I think they should count their lucky stars to have her as a governor. So she frequently invites him to her roundup, the Buffalo Roundup in Custer State Park. And so she says to him, "Hey, tell that kid who bought that blue roan horse to come along." And the first day we're sitting there, her son-in-law rides up to me and he kind of looks me up and down. He's like, "We really liked that horse." And
he's a nice horse.
Yeah,
he is.
He's been good to me.
Yeah,
because when I got, hadn't been roping for like 25 years or 20 years when I bought him and was getting back into it. And I told my wife, I was like, one of us has to be good, either me or the horse. But if we're both bad, This is going to go horrible. And Craig's boys are CNFR types, and they've been rodeoing off of him. And he wasn't lying when he said he'll get you to the right spot. Just let him.
Yeah.
show
So
you.
this clinic right here is for you, in my opinion, is it getting you ready for this year's American Hero Celebration in November. And man, I
100%.
thought you did great. Man,
Well,
I think once it looked like you learned how to get that horse to rate off in position, but then hold that rate through your throw, through your slack, to where you were getting up there, rating in position good, but then you'd throw, then you let your horse go through your throw, and then that's kind of that is a recipe for waving off, and it's a hard handle as well.
And it's something I've been battling kind of all summer. We get into it a little bit later, but I've been back to work flying jets again this year after a 7-year break, and so man, I flew my guts out all over the world this summer, and I did not get the time swinging my rope I wanted to, and every time I found and my poor horses get neglected and not getting the time and love they need, and so that was a common battle, and I knew it. My good buddy Marty Okamura, who's here, and he's the one. Remember, he healed for me last year. That in the and we went to the cow town together. Man, he's Wolfie. He's good, and he's been telling me, he's like, Todd, you're getting too high. You're riding too high, and I know that. But it's one thing, okay, but how do I fix it?
Right.
And that's why it was such a treat to get to have somebody who can articulate it like you do.
It was fun. It was fun. It was also fun too, is getting to talk to you, because like when I'm talking about getting your swing sighted in, where you're able to relate it to when you're flying jets.
Yeah, I couldn't help listening to the clinic today and yesterday, how many things. And if any of my buddies that are, like Ty Wilson, another ambassador to your organization, that are pilot types, especially fighter pilot types, but they'll, and Bill, they will relate to this, but there are so many parallels. So yesterday you were talking about, when you were talking about your daughter and people, you hit the front of the box and you just blank. And then after the run,
the
you're
blank
like,
out
what
phase.
happened?
Yeah.
Where was I? I think of like Will.
Which any of us who's competed when we were first getting started all relate to a blank out.
Well,
you nod your head, you coil your rope up. What the heck happened?
Yeah, where was I? like on Old School with Will Ferrell, when he debates and he just kind of goes into it, and then he all of a sudden he's like, "Where was I?" And he gives this brilliant answer, and he doesn't even know where he's been.
Well, what I like is when we get up there on the Smarty and we rope and we step out and we go to get it tight, and we go try to get it tight from the saddle horn to the steer's horn. And the amount of times I watch guys just watch their horse go to the left, but it's like off Talladega Nights when he wins his first race and his hands come up in front of his head.
I don't really know what to do with my hands. Yeah.
I can feel something happening, but I don't know what to do.
They're just they're on autopilot.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do feel like my horse is on autopilot.
I've been there.
Yeah.
I mean, these are all things, like I tell everyone. I said, look, the good thing about me as a clinician, I lost plenty of money doing these certain things right here. And this is where I'm hoping you don't lose your money. This is where I'm hoping you get your money back.
Right. Okay, so the blanking. So we used to teach. I was lucky enough. It's weird. I came to teaching kids to be baby fighter pilots by a weird way. When I was in the Air Force, I was an instructor in what's called a T-30. You can actually see it over your right shoulder, that little black jet.
Okay.
I'm in the picture with there. Looks like they actually use those at the end of Top Gun as the so-called MiG-28, which is a fictional.
No, that's exactly what it looks like.
Yeah.
Got it.
So, but there's no such thing as an actual MiG-28. But
well, there is a Top Gun.
Yeah, there is. So it's kind of is reality.
Don't destroy all of our childhood freaking heroes.
What was I thinking? It actually is very real. And so then I went from that to flying the U-2, which is highest flying plane in the world. We sat in that yellow spacesuit there above 70,000 feet. And then I got hired by Delta, and but I wasn't ready to be done flying jets and going upside down, doing all that stuff. And plus, we learned from 9/11 that the airline industry can be very cyclical. And so It was.
What does that mean?
Meaning the old joke is that they hire until they furlough, and then they furlough till they hire. So it's a cycle of hire and then furlough and then hire. It's smooth. Knock on wood, it has smoothed out in the last 10 years or more. But so I knew I had to keep my toes in the military gig, and I still wanted to. And I had 2 young kids, so I had an ex-wife who lived in McAllen, Texas, with my 2 older now, but at the time they were like 3 and 5. And so I applied to this Navy unit thinking, it's close to my kids. I'm going to try. It's 2 hours, Kingsville to McAllen. But I kind of already had my dream reserve job lined up, Southern California. So, but I'll try. When I first talked to them, they were like, man, go away, dude. What are we going to do with the Air Force guy? You got to land on a boat. And so I'm like, yeah, but my kids are 2 hours from here. Well, the good thing about the U-2 is we had Navy guys, we had Marine guys, we had all kinds. And one of my good buddies, his call sign was Gandhi, had gone through Top Gun with the then wing commander of this outfit. He writes the good old boy email like, hey, Horny's got a great act. He's funny. You can pick on him, whatever. So, and he can kind of fly the jet okay. I mean, he tries. So anyways, the next thing I know, they're like, send me your stuff. I sent them my application, and I'd already accepted this other job down in Southern California, and then they called me, and they're like, hey, we're going to hire you. And I look at, Tamara, who was my fiance at the time, and like, well, what should we do? And she's like, we got to go be by your kids. She's an angel. So here we do. We moved to Texas, and I find myself, a year later, I'm lined up behind the USS George Bush. I'm 32 years old, doing my first carrier landings. They were like, what? Why am I doing this? But it was awesome. It was amazing. And so I get into the Navy, and I hadn't really flown, I'd flown like fighter type jets, but not like an actual gray fighter, fire missiles. And they really needed guys to start teaching that. And they were like, hey, we want you to start teaching BFM, basic fighter maneuvers. I'm like, well, I'm okay. And they're like, I didn't do a ton of that in the Air Force. They're like, but you're a reservist. We're going to have you around for a long time. We're going to make the investment in you. We think you could do it. Plus, when we shoot you all the time, it's fun because you're an Air Force guy and we can feel good about it.
Got to have somebody with a bullseye on your back.
One day I said to a guy after I was teaching a defensive sortie where I have to be defensive, meaning I'm looking back over my shoulder trying to get a student to shoot me. And I was like, God, I hate flying defensive sorties. And true classic Navy, he didn't miss a beat. He goes, well, you should be used to it being an Air Force guy. So anyway, they got me, they taught me to how to fight jets. And I slowly got better and better and better. And to the point where I was, kind of one of the local resident experts at it. And that's all I did. And we would take our jets, those little training jets, out to Top Gun once or twice a year and fight against their students in the 1v1, and they hated fighting us because it's like wrestling your sister, and not in a good way, not like in a good, like an Arkansas way, but like in a like you can't win kind of way. Like if you win, what are you going to say? Like, I beat my sister.
Right,
like,
right.
Nice.
No win.
And if you lose, come
win.
on.
Yeah.
So they did not, and most of the time they would just whip the piss, as they should. They're in a Cat 4 fighter, and we're in a Cat 3 older style with no radar, just visual BFM stuff. But if we could get them to lose sight or make a fundamental BFM error, it was game on. And I remember the first time I went out there, I shot one of my old students bigger, and he was so mad. But anyway, that's kind of how I came to being into the quasi, fighter pilot world. So I spent in Hollywood.
What I thought was fun was to, like yesterday, like we talked about yesterday when we was trying to find the swing. You're trying to find the aim, right? And you was able to put it in a spot to where it related to fighting jets. And what do you call it?
The Pipper.
The Pipper.
Yeah. And there was a couple parts of that really, okay, so like trying to teach a kid to get into a gunshot envelope, or we call it the gun WEZ, weapons engagement zone, right? So you're teaching him to manage his closure rate behind the jet in front of him.
Closure.
'Cause
The rating of the horse in position.
If he shows up with too much closure rate, and I unfortunately your audience can't see me doing the cheesy fighter pilot.
Well, basically
with my
like
hands
in
thing,
Top
but-
Gun. Basically like in Top Gun, when Iceman in Hollywood was in front
hit
of
the
him,
brakes,
right?
he flies right by.
Well, no, it's when he come in right there, but he's holding right there behind Iceman. When Maverick's holding him, he's got his wingman. He's holding his spot right there. Right?
So that would be an example of he's in there's no closure there. He's locked in and he's just in position.
Yep.
Yes.
So to me, like that's when you get up there in position where you got your horse rated off.
Yeah.
When your horse is rated off, he's going the same speed as the steer.
Exactly.
Well, the horns stay in the same spot.
Yeah.
So that's where you're trying to hold that
Yes.
spot with that horse right there. That way the horns don't move and they're right in front of you.
And so
That's what was fun. And when you were talking about what you were
Yeah.
doing, and I was trying to explain that, where it was so fun to be able to watch the relationship of what you do and relate it to roping.
Well, it was like hearing echoes of the past in my head come in. And the other thing, too, it was so as an instructor back in those days, I couldn't tell a student, like, the classic instruction we used to joke about, like, to PG-13 it here, don't fudge it up. Like, okay, well, how do I do that? So
the surface.
Yeah.
The surface instruction.
Yes, exactly.
Which keeps you guessing, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like go up the pin.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
when you rope the steer, go up the pin.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, get in position.
Exactly. Where is that? Exactly.
Yeah, but the good instructors in the jet would tell you, well, here's exactly what position. So you want to be 45 degrees angle off tail. You see the flap hinge under the wing. You want to line that up with the rear cockpit helmet. When you're looking down that, you're 45 degrees angle off tail.
You give me a description.
Now I know that.
I can line it up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or,
right.
okay, I need you to be at 500 feet. That's the inner envelope of the gun was. Okay, well, how's 500 feet? Okay, well, if you can see the little letters under the tail, that's 300.
Articulation of this, given a good vision.
So that's, and that's, I'm not, hopefully, don't want to come across as blowing smoke up your skirt, but you definitely have figured out how to articulate the things that are dynamic and challenging and, take it from the get in position to, okay, here's what being in position looks like. And per, caveman brain, lizard brain guy like me, that I need that. I need something to hang my hat on. Like, okay, you can scream at me, get in position. You're not in position. Okay, but then you tell me, hey, you want to be 1 foot outside the left horn. Then okay, that's something I can hang my hat on.
Mm-hmm.
I
it was fun.
Appreciated it.
It was fun too, because it was fun getting to learn what you do that relates to you, because to me that's one of the biggest things I think is being able to, what someone does for a living. Now, how am I going to be able to articulate it to where you understand it?
Right.
So a few years ago it was actually pretty fun. This guy taught me a lot of shit. This is where I'm going to probably get a little bit more anxious about my wording, where it's a little bit off PG-13, because this was, it was badass on how this guy presented it.
Yeah.
So I got a chance to, in Utah a few years ago, I was doing a lot of lessons, a lot of clinics and stuff, and I ended up going to Utah, and this lady, I was actually helping Jackie with one of her clinics. And it was when I was ERA rodeo, so I got kicked out of the PRCA, so I had a lot of time on my hands, right? So I'm doing a lot of lessons, doing a lot of clinics, things like that. And we get up there to Utah, and this lady comes up as I was pulling the dummy around for Jackie for her clinic right there, and I was doing a few lessons on the side and stuff like that. And she came up and she's like, yeah, my husband, he just kind of getting into roping just a little bit, and I want to be real careful on who I think that he should, learn to rope from, just to learn it correctly and stuff. And I said, what does he do? I said, well, he's kind of at the end of his career, and he's retiring from baseball and stuff. And so, we talked about, because she run barrels and she was wanting to get him into roping. And I'm like, well, she was a very, very attractive woman. She was beautiful. But she wasn't.
Yes. Go on.
Well, she wasn't in college. Okay. So I'm thinking, all right, she's either a cougar who's dating a college kid, or her husband is somebody.
Yeah, this could go a lot of different
ways.
ways.
Well, I'm thinking, like, my first reaction right here is, as beautiful as she was, like, she's probably dating a pro baller.
This
baller,
is maybe somebody I've heard of.
Well, I don't follow baseball. And so anyways, finally we got done and said, hey, well, tomorrow? Yeah, I'd love to. You'll show up. What time? This and that. All right. I said, well, what is his name? She goes, Matt Lindstrom. Well, I wrote it down on my phone and I Googled him that night. I'm like, dude, this guy, you talk about throw smoke.
He's for real.
This dude throws smoke. I think he played for 5 or 7 other, Major League Baseball teams. Got a lot of radar stats on over 100 mile an hour fastballs. Like, this dude throws smoke. So I'm excited. I'm so pumped. So he shows up. We have a lesson right there lined out at 9:00. And this guy shows up in true rock star fashion. Got the jacked up 4-wheel drive, got his hat on backwards, comes out, just came back from the golf course. Hey, man, you ready for a beer? It's like 9:00 in the morning. I'm like, love to, but.
He's a day drinker. Nice.
Yeah, no, I'm good. But I'd love to, but no. So anyways, this guy, you talk about as a natural athlete, just a natural athlete. Well, it was so much fun is like trying to relate what he knows and how he does it to be able to articulate into roping. And, he's like, oh, yeah, that makes that. Yeah, that's exactly. So I'll ask him questions like, all right, now when you throw a ball, when you throw this and that, like to where, okay, now how to relate it now to the swing, to the rotate, all the different stuff. And so it was so much fun. But like, you talk about a mentality. The mentality was freaking so cool to me. So he asked me, he said, man, this is so much fun. I want to do this again tomorrow. He said, what's your schedule tomorrow? I said, well, honestly, I'll probably go to the gym and work out in the morning. And after that, man, I'm free to go.
So had he never swung a rope before?
No. Oh, he's just welding them on.
Seriously? He's not doing the bottom hand up thing and all that?
You show him one time, and he can keep the top strand above the back. It was freaking phenomenal. Wow. Well, he's an athlete. He knows how to, he's a chameleon with that ball and the hand-eye coordination, So anyway, the next day, like, he's like, hey, so what do you got? So I told him I was going to work out. He said, well, what gym you go to? I told him, I said, well, I've only been here a few days, but this is what I'm going to. He goes, that's where I go work out. I said, dude, I would buy you lunch if I go work out with you. That would be awesome. Like, I would love to know, how do I keep my shoulder in shape? How do I keep my core in shape? Like, these guys are scientifically trained.
Yeah, right.
Like, man, to go work out with that guy, like, holy crap. Like, you talk about being able to go to another level. So I get there an hour early, and I'm on this freaking cycle. I didn't even warm myself out before he got there, right?
You did a workout before the workout.
Exactly right. I am pumped. So he gets there, man, and we get to working out. And you just talk about a leader. A guy that just pumps you up. Yeah. Even though he knows, like, I'm just not that, but he make you feel like you're somebody. He's like, man, you're a strong little guy. God,
you're a strong little guy.
Right.
Exactly
right.
A little bit of
it's kind of like bless you. Oh, yeah, exactly. Like you're just,
pretty strong for a little guy.
Yeah, exactly. You're a smart retard, right?
Yeah.
And so it was cool though, because like he was just that leader, man, where he kept you trying to get harder and harder. He was just that presence amount. You know what I mean? Just that alpha leader. And anyway, so I was like, all right, now if I get the chance, I'm going to ask him one question, but just one. And so finally we get done, we get working out and stuff. And I said, hey, man, do you mind if I ask you one question? He's like, oh, yeah, hell yeah, man. I've asked you a million of them. You're the only one you've asked. Sure, yeah, rock on, man. What you got? I said, well, man, how do you deal with adversity? Because I struggle with missing. I struggle with losing. Like that was one thing that was probably my flaw, for so long.
Yeah.
And he told me, he says, oh man, them, some of the sports psychologists, they come on in the off season, they kind of, show you how to deal with adversity and stuff like that. And he was just very nonchalant, like barely even peeled the first onion back. This guy, right? Yeah. And so it was like he kind of just surface level,
sort of blew it off.
Right. And so I'm like, well, so what do you do? Oh well, this and that, blah blah. He kind of kept it a little surface. Maybe give me a couple little nuggets, but nothing, hardly anything. I said, so you're trying to tell me, bottom of the ninth, score's tied, and you throw one in there, and they send one over your head, and you lose a game.
He's just like, well, win some, lose some.
Right. And I said, so that's how you would deal with it? And he goes, well, that happens. It does. Those are things that do happen.
Yeah.
I said, well, then what? And he said, well, then what? And this is when I seen the freaking lion show up, got under the surface now. He goes, I'm telling you what. He said, if I've got another game, he said, if I'm still in the game and somebody sends one over my head, he goes, that Nist motherfucker got a lot to fear. Because I can throw a fastball over 100 miles an hour and I can put that son of a bitch anywhere I want it to go. He said, that next batter got a lot to fear. And I'm like, holy.
Yeah.
Like, wow. That was self-confidence.
You woke him up.
Yeah. I've never seen that.
Yeah.
And in roping, you're like, oh, golly gee shucks, this, that. Or you got the guys that are so arrogant, you can't even. This was confidence.
Yeah.
And it took me a minute to get there.
There's a difference.
when I got there, I'm like, holy crap. Like, if I could get that mentality when I roped, son of a gun. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But it was fun getting, and I kind of got off track right there because this is a cool story. Like, when you get around guys that are like the best at what they do,
absolutely.
You find that self-confidence and what makes them great. Gosh, it's fascinating.
I feel like I was fortunate enough to get to fly with some of the and fly around some of the best pilots in the world. And like I was saying, we got to take our jets out to Top Gun and play around in that environment for a few days at a time. And those guys to me were the epitome of competent but not arrogant. And there is a difference. And they had the confidence of not just accomplishment, but knowing what they were capable of. And also, maybe more importantly, knowing what their weaknesses were, and so when those guys would give a debrief, I always appreciated, and I tried to emulate this. When we'd come back after a BFM hop where like it was 2 students versus me as the bandit, we'd come back and we'd debrief it. I would always point to my own errors first, because it was almost a mark. If somebody pointed out one of my errors before I did, it was almost a sort of a dishonor. Like, did you even know you did that? Which is even worse than so. And these guys were sort of the epitome of that. Like, they'd be the first to point out there, like this is where I'm sure you noticed, but I messed up this. Anybody, what else has anybody else got for me? And these guys are the best in the world. So
to me, just what you said, right there to me, like, that's where, like, I was there. I remember it. I remember college. I remember that era, 18 to 25, that great divide area.
Never show weakness era.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Never accountable.
Yeah.
And what you just said right there was everything where you held yourself accountable for your mistakes. Yeah. This is where I'm going to get better. This is what I've noticed. And it's a security. And that's one of the hardest security stages, because you want to be the adult, but you're not there yet.
Yep.
And to me, like, when someone, like, I was at a clinic the other day in Arkansas, and I was at a college over there in Southern Arkansas University. And this one girl, I'm telling you, she came early and stayed late. Yeah. And I was like, I'm in. Yeah. Because she was not one bit scared. She was so secure that she was fine with her faults, because that's why she was there. She was there to iron them faults out so she can get better.
Yeah.
And when you see that, you're like, that stands out. Well, that truly stands out.
When I first started roping again, I think maybe I surprised a lot of people, or maybe they weren't used to the question, because I hadn't roped in like 25 years. I went and left the family ranch in Wyoming, went and flew jets for 25 years, and then now I'm back roping again. And now I have 20 years of this military, go fly a jet, debrief it ad nausea, the minutia. But the important thing is debrief it while it's fresh in your mind and soak up as much as you. So leaving the strip and shoot, I'd always ride up next to my healer and like, hey, what do you got for me? How was that handle? And 99% of the time I get, that's great. Like, no, I'm like, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Like, tell me, like, hey, you slowed him up too early, or, now, like, I have a couple good buddies that will, like, yeah, I got, like I was saying, my buddy Marty, he's always been great about, hey, like, watch him turn his head first before you leave so hard, and just things. But I always appreciate that. Like, hey, what do you got for me?
Right.
And I mean that. How could it have been better? Because it always can. And that was probably anybody who's went through flight training, especially military flight training, the old adage is there's no such thing as a perfect sortie. Nobody ever will fly a perfect sortie. There's always one thing or more that you could have done better. And so I find myself still sort of in that mentality of looking for that.
To me, that's a productive mentality. I always tell everyone, when you have a certain mindset, that what you're trying to get away from is a critical mindset. Right. Because critical is like the rocking chair. It gives you something to do, don't get you nowhere. Yeah. You're trying to develop that productive mindset. Yeah. Okay, I like this. I nailed the start. I got up there in great position. Yeah. Cut his horns off. Loved it. Got it on the saddle horn. Shoot, I missed the points across the left side of the arena and get the steer's head back.
Right.
All right, now, got the rest of that down. Now, when I get it on the saddle horn, now, how do I hook up? And now, how do I hit the breeze on the left-hand side of the arena? Because that way you're productive.
Well, the other thing that you sort of mentioned this earlier is, when we were talking to the pro baseball player about what do you do when you dick it up, how do you recover from that? And it's funny because this was actually one of my questions at when I went to my interview for Delta Airlines in 2007. I sat down and, they ask a lot of the standard HR type questions. What is one of your biggest weaknesses? And a lot of guys, there's a couple answers that'll just get you like, no thanks. Like, oh, my biggest weakness is I'm a perfectionist. That's not really a weakness, dude. You're trying to hide give me a real weakness. And so I said, honestly, my weakness is, and especially when I was a young instructor, I'd make a mistake in the jet and then I couldn't let it go. Right. And the one thing that is very unique to the flying environment is it never stops. You can't stop. You fall. An airplane cannot stop. It's always going forward. You can't pull over. Helo guys, Bill. You can't, you're always going forward. And so you always have to be thinking out in front of the jet. And if you're thinking about a mistake you made, you're behind the jet already. So I would make a little mistake. Being a perfectionist, I'd be like, God, I'm behind the jet. Now make a bigger one. And that little tiny mistake ultimately leads to a big one. So I had to, and I don't know, I think it was probably a really good instructor that gave me this, but I had to figure out how do I get my mind back in front of the airplane? And
That's a good
he
one.
said,
That's a good analogy.
He said, think of what's my next checklist? What's my next radio call? What's my next point of action? And like I've heard you say, now I'm thinking about what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about this is what I'm going to do. And it's in the future. I'm thinking ahead of the airplane again and I'm back. And so I shared that story.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah. To this day, if I got to fly to London tomorrow, if I make a mistake in the airplane, I'll think, okay, what's my next radio call? Who am I talking to next? What's the next checklist we're going to run?
Yeah.
Get me thinking in front of the airplane again. But it's the same exact thing you said about, focus on a positive mentality versus
absolutely
versus a negative one.
So where did you grow up then, and when did the military started? What period of time was that when the military started coming into real life?
So I am a 1975 vintage. Some people say that's maybe the greatest year Americans ever born.
78 was a good model.
Yeah.
The 78 model wasn't bad.
They're not bad. But the 75 crew. So, and my dad was going to school in New Mexico, at New Mexico State, where I went. And then he came back to the family ranch around 80. And, my great granddad homesteaded a place along the Cheyenne River in the early 1900s. And, so, and my cousin, runs and, manages it today. And so, I grew up, I was fortunate to grow up, doing the ranch kid thing and roping. But then I left, to go do the college and military thing after 93. Went, did Air Force ROTC and then right into flying jets in the Air Force and never really looked back.
When did you say that started?
93.
How old were you then?
18.
So right out of high school.
Yeah. Right out of high school.
Now, was that a passion or was that, how did that,
one of the gals at the clinic asked me, like, did you always want to fly airplanes? And actually I started out
because this is after Top Gun.
Yeah, and that absolutely had any guy of my age who says that didn't influence, he's lying, right? Yeah, exactly. Come on, dude.
Mm-hmm.
We all saw.
So that movie's still on some of my passcodes when it asks what my favorite movie is.
Nice.
Top Gun, man. That was the rankest movie ever.
Yes.
And the sequel was even
good. It really was. Yeah, I was fearful that they would tarnish such an American treasure. And
it was a great remodel.
Yeah, because there's been some part dues that didn't go well, and you wish they should have stopped.
That one wasn't one of it.
Caddyshack, Ghostbuster, like, come on.
It was good.
He did a great job. So I went, actually started off at a little school in South Dakota at Black Hills State University, thinking I was going to play football. And I quickly realized how white and slow I was.
I've been there.
I had a high combination of those two things that made me realize maybe something else. And fortunately, I had a pretty decent grades in math and physics, and so the Air Force is like, come on.
So those two add up, math and physics.
Yeah,
that adds up good in flight.
It helped. It gave me a scholarship, and then I I've flown with guys that were history majors, political side, but
before 18.
Yeah,
No kidding.
Yeah, and but in general, there's a sort of a scientific thinking or critical thinking process that lends itself to flying for sure. And so it helped me just it's a competitive application kind of thing. And so I went into the jet plane world. And
so at 18, you decided Air Force this is the route you're taking.
Yeah, I didn't even know. I went to the library. Remember when we had the Dewey Decimal System?
Well, I remember hearing it. You'd have to refresh my memory.
The card
what it
catalog, you'd go look.
Oh, at the library.
Yeah. You're like, and so I just went and got a book on Air Force ROTC, and I wrote down the number, went back to my dorm room, and then pulled out the calling card and dialed the 25 numbers before I can finally dial the number I need, and some guy answered, and I remember him going, I go, hey, I was trying to get some information about Air Force ROTC. And he goes, how'd you get this number? From the library. Well, you kind of went straight to the top, Slick, and let me give you somebody who can help you out. I think it was like a general or something. I don't know. But anyway, I ended up getting a hold of the right people, and they really took care of me. And I tell my daughter all the time, probably one of the most significant and best decisions I ever made in my life was that day I decided to join the Air Force and Air Force ROTC, because it put my whole life on a path that, no way it would have, who knows what it would have been. But,
so what do you think the reasons were? Like discipline?
Well, in my case, I wanted to do something cool, something that I would be passionate about, something that, at the end of the day, I didn't really feel like it was work. It was more, and I remember watching like Wings documentaries and and Top Gun, and like those doesn't look like work. It's like being a rock star.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like work. And I will say, there were long days, and there were days I was tired and exhausted, but it never felt like a job. It was. I still remember sitting at my desk when I was a commander, like a skipper of a Navy Reserve squadron, and I'm supposed to be doing all this paperwork, and somebody poked their head and like, Horny, we need somebody to go fly. Yep, I'm there. Hey honey, sorry I'm going to be late again tonight. But
well, so how long were you in the Air Force, and then what made the transition into the Navy?
So I got out of the Air Force in 2007 when they were.
So how long were you in the Air Force?
9 years and 7 months. Yep, almost just 3 months shy of 10 years. Okay. That's bad math. A few months shy of 10 years, and it was a fortunate time. Delta had just started hiring again after the bankruptcies that resulted from 9/11. All the airlines had either gone through bankruptcy or furloughed, and they were just starting to hire again. And the Air Force offered some early out opportunities. I actually wasn't thinking I was going to get out until all that kind of showed up. And I had an ex-wife and a couple kids living in South Texas, so it made sense. And so I jumped and went to Delta, and then into the Navy Reserves about a year later.
So what do you feel the transition was from Air Force to Navy?
It's funny. Navy guys, they don't have a lot of lost love for Air Force pilots. And I didn't know this going in. Probably a good thing, because I didn't know that in the Air Force, they don't really think about the Navy a lot in terms of aviation. You think, you think of mostly as a sea service, Yeah, they got some airplanes that fly off the carrier, but mostly you think of them as boats. But then the Navy or the Navy sees Air Force pilots as kind of, I mean, it's mostly a friendly, sort of rivalry, but there's some actual, so I show up and here, and oh, by the way, I am the first non-Navy guy that this unit has ever hired in its history. It was like a trial thing. And they told me, like,
So
hey,
here you are.
Yeah, you're the kind of a trailblazer here, so don't screw this up. There won't be any more. No pressure.
Yeah.
So, but fortunately, I kind of, just by my nature have always had this attitude of like, you can make fun of me, but not as good as I can make fun of me. So go ahead and try. I'll just make a better joke about me than you did. And they quickly realized, like, what's the point of busting Horny's nuts? He's just going to make a better joke about himself than, I'd be like, well, that's pretty good. But what, it'd be better if you would have said this. And really, I think in the end, it endeared me to them. And another thing I did that I think was important is I decided, no matter how crazy, because I'd been flying jets for 10 years and over 3,000 hours at this point, but no matter how crazy I hear something, I'm like, that's dumb. Why are we doing that? I'm just going to hit the I believe button and do it their way for a year, at least a year. And then when I go to the boat, and then after that, okay, then it's game on. I'm going to start speaking up. And I'm so glad I did, because there were so many times I'm like, this is stupid. Like, this is dumb. The way that they would join up, do formation joins in the Navy was so different, so much slower. The first time I jumped in a Navy jet, and had a guy in the backseat with me, and I go to join up on another airplane, and I freaking rage it in there at like 100 knots of closure and just stick it in there. And he's like, God, Horny, you cannot do that and show that to a student. And I'm like, well, I'll get a little quicker. I'm a little rusty. I've been fine. And they're like, no, that was. Well, then I realized, oh, okay, they're used to, they join up in the Navy, you're stacked up over the boat in 500-foot stacks. I mean, you're crammed in these little stacks. There's no room for some of the shenanigans that we would do in the Air Force to get, so it was just a different culture. And once I learned there's a reason for the way they do it, I was like, okay, it makes sense. And there were so many things that in the end, I'm like, okay, I'm glad I didn't say anything. I just made myself look like an even bigger ass. But yeah, it was an interesting trend. But in the end, and they kept promoting me. I'm like, is this a joke? They're just like trying to see how far they can go with this Air Force guy. And by the time I retired, I was the commander of the unit that had originally told me to go away. So I guess the joke was on them eventually. But yeah, it was I say it was probably the second best decision I ever made, was to go into the Navy.
Mm. So how long were you there till you retired?
10 years.
So what year did you retire?
2019.
19.
Yeah.
Got it. So we talked about kind of what you've flown and stuff like that. And one of the things that you've done such an amazing job of is your story that's been hard to talk about. It's hard, things that, but it's also, I think, some of the things that make people great sometimes are hard to talk about. Those are the hard times. And so
yeah.
What, you were in a wreck.
Yeah.
And what year was that wreck? And how did it all happen?
Yeah.
When did it all start? And who was all with you? Walk me through
how,
and when. And
I'll say this, you just alluded to it. It was a traumatic event in my life. And so it's a story that I share deliberately for an organization like yours, right? Like, I would never want to feel like I'm just whoring it out, like, hey, I'll go,
totally understand.
Pay me enough, I'll go sell my soul.
Never one time did I ever feel that about you.
Yeah, so. But I will share it when it has purpose. And you're obviously American, Hero Celebration and Liberty and Loyalty have purpose, and have had a big purpose in my life. So it's important. I find it important to share my story, because I want people to also know what type of organization it is and what kind of people they're helping. But in my case, I was on leave from Delta Airlines in 2016. I took a leave to go take command of a Navy Reserve squadron. And I was just finishing up that tour when my son, I told you I had 2 older kids that lived in South Texas, who is now in 8th grade, had a cross-country meet in Austin. And because I was, working 2 jobs a lot of the time, Delta and then the Navy Reserves, it wasn't uncommon for me to rent an airplane to the 2-hour drive to see my older 2 would cut down to 40 minutes. Mm. So oftentimes I'd rent airplanes to go see him. And so my son had this cross-country meet north of Austin. I rent an airplane to go watch it on a Saturday morning. So Madeline, who you know from the clinic today, and she was 6 years old at the time. So she's just a little girl. So we crawl into this airplane on a Saturday morning. And I was a very deliberate, even in small airplanes, very cautious. Like I had 3 rules. I'm not going to fly them at night. I'm not going to fly them in the weather. I'm not going to fly them over bad terrain. Because all 3 of those things, you're betting your life on that motor. If it quits, what are you going to do? At nighttime, you're going to cross your fingers and say, good luck. Over the mountains, you might find a soft place. And then in the weather, you can't see, so you might as well put a blindfold on and wish for the best, So take out those 3 things, though, and it's, Texas is generally pretty flat. So that was kind of my thinking, and it was that kind of day and that kind of flight until the very last, probably the last 3 minutes of that flight were kind of over the hill country north of Austin. And that's when, as we're coming into land and I go to add power back in, there's nothing there. And the NTSB would find years later that the fuel strainer was so clogged and corroded that it wasn't allowing any fuel to the motor. So that when I asked for it, there was just nothing there. And so I knew immediately, at this point I had flown jets for 17 years, approaching 5,000 military hours flying, probably more than that with Delta at least. And I knew this is a bad situation. And there was also a moment of kind of indignity, like, really? Like I flew over the Taliban in a spacesuit sitting at 70 plus thousand feet. I flew over the ocean all by myself in the U-2. I flew all over the world. I did a lot of dynamic things. I landed on the carrier. I taught fighter maneuvers. And this is going to happen with my 6-year-old daughter sitting right next to me. Like, it was almost like, really? But I also knew I had to get to work because the next 45 seconds are going to determine whether she has any more life
reactions.
And it was a sobering moment where I said to her, honey, I need you to make sure your seatbelt's real tight for daddy, okay? And that's all the time I had to tell her. So I'm looking around, it's trees everywhere, kind of the nightmare scenario. And at the last minute, there's a small clearing. I do my best, sort of fighter maneuver, hard rudder nose over, and then level the wings and plan it in this little clearing. And we slide forward. As we slide forward, the wings peel off between some trees, and now we're just a fuselage sliding forward and come to rest against the fence. And the plane was on fire like that, like immediately. I could hear it. The sound of a campfire when it's just crackling. I could hear that noise. Right. Even before I could feel the heat, I could hear that noise, and I knew. So I ball her up in my lap. I reach over, I grab her, I ball her up in my lap, and I just lean over her and cover her. And now by this time, there's planes coming up. And I'm covering her with my body. I kick the door open beside me, and then I just heave her out with all I got. Then I stand up to get out, and as I do, it just like a bonfire. I'll never forget that moment. They say in moments where you realize your own mortality, guys that have experienced things like this in combat, or you cry out to your mom or to your God. And I still remember tucking my head down in my chin like this and crying out, "Oh God," as I felt. I mean, that's a heat that I just don't think you can ever explain. But I still had the presence of mind to dive hard left and roll out of this airplane.
Mm.
And a lot of this, I have to defer to what Madeline has relayed, and because there's a kind of a shock,
Right.
that I was in. But I know that eventually we made it to a wooded area, or through the woods, about a mile, no shoes, half my body's burned, 3rd degree or worse, and get to a road where a buddy who had been waiting for me at the airport was there. And Madeline had some minor burns on her hands. That was the only part of her body I couldn't cover with mine. It was like hanging over the side of the seat. She had some like 1st of maybe 2nd degree. She's 6 years old, so she's in pain. And as a dad, it consumes you. And as soon as I see the first responders eventually make it there, and I see that they have her, it was kind of like my body was just ready to check out. I had my buddy call Tamara, and he had said, "Hey, they've been in an accident, but they're okay." And she's like, "Well, I want to talk to him." Well, he can't talk right now, but he's okay. And then I see that they have Madeline, and they're asking me a million questions. I sit down on the pavement, and I lay my head down, and I go, "Hey, guys, I got to check out for a while. Pain's too much." And I closed my eyes, and I woke up 40 days later.
40 days later.
Yeah, and 12 surgeries already under my belt.
12 surgeries.
Yeah. So for 40 days, I was sedated basically on a ketamine magic carpet ride kind of deal, which, thank God, we progressed in burn. Used to be in the 70s, 80s, and maybe even more recent than that. The thought was that you needed to be more present during the wound debridement, so that, because I don't know, I don't want to speak out of turn here above my expertise level, but I think it had to do with they needed to gauge your response in terms of maybe how deep they were scrubbing. I don't know, but to me, it's ungodly humane to think about. But fortunately, now there's a lot more sedation while they do that. So, but still, I don't want to shortchange the pain that was involved in that one. So I wake up 40 days later, and Tamara's sitting by me. She starts filling me in on everything that's happened. Or, Madeline's had a birthday. My whole family has been there, and she tells me about a GoFundMe that's been started, and she's like, "Well, there's some good news." I'm like, "Okay." She's like, "Well, your buddies Chad and Justin, they started a GoFundMe, and it raised over $200,000. I was like, "What?" So this was during the first the Trump Hillary campaign, that first 2016, right? So it was a lot of political, just like toxic, everybody's hating. And suddenly here's this story of like dad saves daughter. I mean, these aren't my words. This is just what, like, the story that's one of some of the headlines were dad saves daughter in airplane crash. And it just kind of went viral. I mean, I'm reading the comments, and there's people from all around the world that are just sending money because they like, this story really touched me. And I'm still some days when I think, well, there's a lot of bad people out there, but I remember there's also a lot of good people out there. And I was like, "What are you talking about? $200,000?" It was just this thing where my buddy's like, "We don't know what to do." And so they had initially set a goal, like, I don't know, $5,000 or $10,000. And they called the GoFundMe people, like, "Okay, we're good. We have to shut it." And of course they're like, no, leave it going. We've never had one, grow like this. And so anyways, and then it was, just time to start putting the pieces back together. And it was not, there's a couple things that stand out in my mind from that time. Out of the ICU, you go into a step-down unit. This is all at Fort Sam in San Antonio. What used to be Brooks Army Medical Center is now Fort Sam, or SAMC, San Antonio Military Medical Center. but they have one of the best burn units in the world because they have what's called the Institute of Surgical Research, and they treated all the guys that got blown up in Iraq and everything, and so they're at the forefront of burn treatment. And so the next 30 days, I'm in this kind of step down unit, and two things that stand out in my mind. One, I still remember looking at Tamara and saying, and this is probably one of the lowest points of my life, just saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be in this body. I just want to go back to my old life. And I mean, what do you say? What can she say? And then the other thing I remember, and this one I don't probably share a lot because it's kind of hard to think about, but so it's pretty commonly known that the burn unit uses more morphine than the rest of the hospital combined. It's not even close. There's no close second. And I still remember the worst time for me was right before I went to bed, because I knew that in the morning they're going to come in with that big steel table and take all my bandages off and put me on it and take me to the shower and scrub my burns. And there is no amount of morphine that can take all that away. I mean, there were times I just had to tap out, be like, we take a break for a little bit, we do more. And so, yeah, try going to sleep knowing that's what your wake up was going to be. It's kind of a recipe for some sleepless nights.
So just the burns and just going through all the surgeries, and then just the constant trying to get your skin to basically take, correct?
Yeah, they're robbing from one place of your body to put it on another.
And then that's just skin. Everything that I've heard is just torture.
Yeah. And I feel
I know it's not, I don't mean a bad torture, but I mean it's
sure.
just you're being tortured to try to survive what you can make happen.
Yeah.
Because just you describing it to me makes, oh my gosh, like, ugh.
Yeah, I wouldn't
wish
it on anyone.
Right.
But each day got a little better. I learned to look at, it's one of those things where you learn to look at life and go, okay, maybe I'm not where I want to be, but where am I compared to where I was? And I started looking at things that way as I went through my recovery. And
how much of that through your recovery did you feel like that helped you get through of it? Did you feel like kids?
Well, yes. Certainly my kids, I knew they still needed a dad.
Yeah.
I knew that.
Because to be a man,
yeah,
I get that the fact that you're going to, it's going to struggle, it's going to suck, this hurts, it's painful, everything else. I want my old life back. But that, I mean, every alpha, every guy that's a man,
sure.
I mean, he's like, God, but that overtakes almost that thought of, because I get it. I mean, I totally understand, like, God, like, I can make it all go away. But,
well, and my wife, Tamara was my caretaker there were days. So after I got out of the step down unit, then now they turned me loose and I stay at another great organization, nonprofit called the Fisher House Society. They have sort of like big, almost like look like frat or sorority houses. Anybody's ever seen those on campuses? They're a big plantation style, but it's where military families who have a member who's in the hospital long term can stay right there on the hospital grounds for free. We stay, so basically you're like in a hotel room, and then you go downstairs, a big communal kitchen. What an amazing organization, by the way, the Fisher House Society. But we stayed in one of those for 18 months, me and Tamara and Madeline, and while our home in Corpus Christi, Texas, just sat empty, And so there were days Tamara would bathe me, bandage me, do all my ointments, treatments, clean my wounds, then bandage me in what was like a 4 or 5 hour process. Then have to go be a mom to a 6 or 7 year old.
Right.
Then get up the next morning, do it all over again. That's why I joke with her, but it's serious that she has, stay at home privileges for life. It's like, you don't care. You don't do anything. Not that being a stay at home, I was not doing it. She's obviously doing something, but we'll be empty nesters here in about 3 years, and I don't care. I watch, when you watch somebody you go through something like that with somebody, you watch them, it changes the way you look at it.
Yeah, it's definitely got to change a lot of relationship for sure.
For sure. Absolutely, for sure.
So you've also become, after this, you've done a few speaking engagements.
Yeah.
Because of this. Because it's a great story. It really is. I mean, overcoming things, because, I think everyone is always overcoming something. You really are. But it's the, you hear that everyone's worst story is their worst story. So like when someone talks about, well, the worst thing that ever happened to them was the fact that their parents cut them off of YouTube. Well, to them, that's the worst thing that's ever happened.
Right.
And sometimes to be able to hear someone's story on what is a whole nother level of what you go through gives you an appreciation for the kind of life that you have.
Yeah.
And you've done a great job of, well, for one thing, when we met, it was, I can't remember exactly what year it was, but it was
2020.
Was it my first?
No, it was.
I thought it was in Decatur.
Okay,
2021.
It was the year before last year.
Right there.
Sorry. So last year's was 23. It was 21. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So it was in Decatur.
Yeah.
And the first time I met you, they told me a lot about your story, and you was just kind of getting back.
Yeah.
You started off in a ranch in Wyoming, and you was kind of starting to get back to roping a little bit, but you was very hesitant and everything because there's a lot of, your body can only take so much.
Yeah.
And I think the ride, and there's a lot of things that was painful, right?
Yeah.
Well, when you got there, it was hard for me to kind of give you any slack because of how good your attitude was.
Yeah.
Your attitude was so full of life that, like, literally it didn't seem like anything could bother you.
Yeah.
And that was so inspiring for me. And so when I met you at the clinic, you came in the Horns and Heroes clinic and you were in the roping, and it was inspiring. You know what I'm saying? Like, you had been through all these different things and you couldn't tell it.
Yeah.
Attitude has so much of an appeal, so much of an attraction on what you can freaking tolerate.
Right.
And that's when I seen it in you. It was freaking inspiring.
Yeah, I guess you don't really know how much you can handle until you have to handle it. I'll tell you something that you probably don't know, and probably few people know. But so when I met you, I was in so I had one last hurdle to get over in my recovery that I hadn't when I got to you. And this is probably going to shock you a little bit. So when I got out of the burn unit in San Antonio.
What year is that?
That was 2019. And that's when I medically retired from the Navy. And so then they put me back together in terms of saved my life, got me healthy, right? But as far as the aesthetic stuff, like how you look, that was like, you're going to have to do that sort of on your own. Well, fortunately, there's another great organization, which one of the ones I spoke for them last year. Bill heard it in Dallas at the country club there, and they're Sons of the Flag. And this is what they do. They support military, first responder, burn survivors. And they pair them up with the greatest surgeons in the world. And so they paired me up with Dr. Julian Preboz down in Tampa, who had done the world's first ever full facial transplant. Like in 2012, him and a team of doctors at Harvard, no kid, took a face off a dead person and put it on a live one. So that's the kind of guy that I could never have afforded him. He was down in Tampa now at Tampa General, and mostly working with cancer patients, but he is part of their mission. And he's like, yeah, whatever your TRICARE will support, I'll do. So they start sending me down there. It's a funny story. The first time I went down there, they sent me by this private jet that these corporate guys donate their jet time. And they said that this pilot comes in and he's flying single seat little Cessna jet, like a Cessna 2 or 3, like it's a single pilot business jet, like it seats like 6 people behind there. And he goes, he's like, hey, I look at him, I go, where's just you, no co-pilot or first officer? He's like, yeah, it's only one pilot. And I go, not anymore. And he goes, I know, I read your bio. You want to fly? I go, damn right. He's like, all right. He gets me pointed down the runway. He's like, your jet. And I flew that sucker all the way to from Boise to like Tampa.
Was that the first time you flew?
That was the first time I touched a jet, and that was in 2020. First time I touched a jet since I crawled out of a burning airplane.
So what did that feel like?
It was amazing. It was so important to me because I didn't know if I would be able to do. I was like, "What? Can I even do this anymore? Am I just going to go like full retard, and just like, what does this even mean? If I talk on the radio, will I even know what to say?" And it was like, it would be like if you didn't touch a rope for 5 years, and then I handed you a rope and put you on a horse, you'd within 30 seconds you'd be back. Now you wouldn't be as sharp and tuned up as you are, but you would
feel the passion come back. You feel the second nature of things that just flowed. And
when you do something as long as I had flown jets, or as long as you roped, it's there.
Yeah.
And thank God, because I needed it to be. So anyway, back to what you didn't know. So, and in 2020, I started going down to Tampa, and Dr. Prevost is now basically reconstructing my face. He ends up, I think I did 14 or 15 surgeries with him. Some big ones, like, see my neck here? That used to be my thigh, right? So this was a 14-hour team of 3 surgeons, 4 surgeons maybe. But they did, so I told myself, until he tells me, okay, I'm done, we're good, I'm not going to look. So when I met you, you had seen my face more since 2017, probably 2016-ish, than I had. I went through a 5-year period without ever looking at my face. It's weird. Imagine, like, you learn to just, like, look, like, there's a mirror and you just kind of fuzzy your eyes out. Like, that was my way of saying, I can't do anything about this right now, so I'm not going to worry about it.
Right.
And I can't tell you how liberating that is, because I had no idea, right? Now, there is a little bit of, I mean, those chickens are going to come home to roost at some point. Like, at some point, you're going to have to look at the elephant in the room and deal with it.
Face it.
Right? And I did. And it was a bit of a traumatic, like, holy cow, like, this is what everybody else has been looking at for this last 5 years.
I had no idea it was this handsome.
Like, wow, you're welcome, world. Must be nice. Remember Johnny Bravo? Must be nice being you, looking at me. But yeah, but that was just I don't know what the psychologist would say about that, if that's a good thing or bad thing. But I'll tell you what, when they've had half their body burned off and their face reconstructed, then they want to come tell me how they dealt with it, then I'll listen.
Listen.
But I'll tell you what, I had the attitude that you're talking about because I found a way to maintain that. Because the things, and this is what you do in airplanes, right? Like, shit's on fire. Everything you start getting rid of tasks that aren't important and that you can't do anything about, and you go right to what is solely important.
Right.
There were days during my burn recovery where I focused on, how am I going to get through the next 15 seconds of my life? That's all I like these next 15 seconds. I got to get through. Okay, I got that. Now, how can I get through the next 5 minutes?
One break at a time.
Okay, now how can I get through the next hour?
Right.
I'd live my life in those tiny little chunks until eventually I could expand out into. And so that was just a big chunk that I cast aside. And Tamara she was kind of my mirror at times. And but anyway, that was, so when I came to the when it was still the American Military Celebration, I had no idea at that point. I was just like, that's down the road, I'll deal with that. And so I was getting ready to, but being able to go, and also I'd kind of hidden out a lot. I still had a few surgeries left too at that point, that were kind of big ones. But still, I'd kind of hidden out. And that was sort of like, I'm coming, out to the party here, the world again. And I wasn't sure how people were going to react. Like, I don't know how people are going to react to me, like, are they going to be weird to me or like treat me with kid gloves and I loved it when I got there and some guys were busting my nuts. And I'm like, oh, sweet. You don't bust a guy's nuts when he's like you feel sorry for him. Unless you're a real asshole, but I mean, I guess
I don't know where
we're
putting me in this category.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I was happy that guys were gonna bust my chops a bit, and that gave me, and between that and then being able, just knowing that I could rope again and do something that's that dynamic and athletic and challenging. It gave me the confidence to go, okay, I'm going to go finish this next couple years surgeries, and then I'm going to get back to flying jets again at Delta Airlines, which is what I'm doing today. So that was a huge, huge part of it, of getting over that last final hurdle.
Because I remember last year at our gala, our guest speaker was the Admiral, Admiral Beale.
Yeah, Woody.
And he talked about you. It was really cool because you're going to be our guest speaker also this year at our gala. So it's going to be really cool to where he kind of laid the groundwork to where you're going to get to come up and speak. And it was really cool to talk about, I guess, in some points, what he was for your career, but then also, too, was where it also came around, too, where you had actually talked about where just getting back in the saddle again, so to speak, helped you get back in the saddle again back to flying planes.
Yeah, he played a big part in the behind-the-scenes goings on. The Navy took really good care of me, and he had sort of because he was a high-ranking guy in certain positions in the Navy, he had been on promotion boards and watched sort of my career all along, and then so he knew me a lot. But when he called me after talking to you and we talked, I was like, wow, this guy knows a lot about me. But what a great guy. And I'm hoping I can do him justice. Kind of like on Dumb and Dumber, where I was like, hey, mate, talk me up so I don't have to brag so much about myself later. Tell him I'm rich and good looking and have a rapist wit. But yeah, I'm glad that I think it'd be good to continue the story that he started last year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a great follow-up because, like I said, as I was listening to him and he was pairing all this together, and then when he dropped your name at the end, I'm like, holy crap. How cool is that?
It was kind of a Paul Harvey, like, now you know the rest of the story.
It was so exactly like that. Yeah. It was awesome. It was awesome. It was a great tee-up into this year.
Yeah.
Very excited this year for our gala there in Decatur, Texas on Saturday, I believe, November 9th. And, yeah, you're going to be our guest speaker. It's going to be fun. I mean, you're going to have to follow me.
Yeah.
So the good thing is, like,
will be tough.
They say Ron White, he makes sure that whoever, is in front of him in a comedy session that they suck. So that way when he shows up, he's the star.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tee you up bigger than Dallas there when I bring my talent level right there to my public speaking.
Oh,
it's going to be a lot of fun.
Don't kid yourself, Judge. You're a tremendous slouch. You got to know Caddyshack lines were like it was 101 as a naval aviator, and that's that was another thing. Getting back into the rodeo community, a roping community has so much in common with what I had missed about the military. Just the lightheartedness of it. I mean, when you're deployed and you're going to do a job that very likely could get you killed, tortured, or both, you can't be just zoned in on that thought 24/7. You'll lose it.
Right.
You have to blow out. And so some of the biggest, dick around kind of guys I ever knew were also some of the most deadliest, amazing, pilots, and they could flip a switch, but they also knew how to, have fun.
Right.
And I appreciate that about a lot of the rodeo community.
Yeah,
as well.
cowboys, there's a certain romance around being a cowboy. You know, I always say there's cowboys. To me, cowboys are the guys that can ride horses and they're handy. They can ride the buckers. They can freaking doctor cows, calves. You know, they're the guys that keep America going. You know, they're the true American cowboys. They keep food on our table.
Yeah.
And then there's the rodeo cowboys. You know, that was me.
Right.
You know, I was a wannabe cowboy. The romance of being a cowboy was always so much fun. I loved it. But I wanted to be at the NFR.
Yeah.
You know, and so that was such a big dream of mine. But we're all shitheads. You know what I mean? We're all at that point in time. Like, we hated school. We didn't want to get smart.
Yeah.
We didn't want a job. We wanted to do what we wanted to go do because it was just that freedom. I mean, we roamed the country. We got to see everything around this whole entire United States.
Put me in a cubicle. You might as well just kill me.
Shoot me.
You know? Like, I'll go get in the cockpit for 12 hours and be fine. But you put, like, type of report. But, not that there's anything wrong with those.
Well, I think you're wired for certain things. And
Yeah.
I think, like, say, for a lot of us, you know, school was what bored us so much because men are not supposed to be inside 8 hours a day.
Right.
Men are supposed to be outside.
Yeah.
You know, we're supposed to be outside doing stuff. And that was what we were so attracted to, is the fact that there was so much outside activities to do. You're roping, you're moving, you're doing so many different things. And I think it's so good, I think, for that outlet for a lot of these guys in the military that have so many things going on where they get to go do stuff.
Right.
They get their balls back, you know, like an American Sniper, you know what I'm saying? Where
Get
they get to go rope, they get to go get that adrenaline again. You know, they get to be around their guys. And that's what I've seen so much about this event, was just watching the guys kind of get that feeling back again. And it's been fun to watch. Been a great outlet, I think, for you guys, but then for the Western industry who truly supports you guys, it's a great way for them to be able to come together and show their support.
Well, I tell you, there is a lot of common ground in the Western community, in the military community. And I'll tell you, you know, this, where I saw this recently was when I was in San Luis Obispo. And that's a whole nother part of my story that we'll have to get.
Ben Londo has done some cool stuff over there in Cali, man.
And it just so happened that another great family and organization and Black Mountain Ranch in Colorado that helped, you know, before I even came to you, that's where I got started back into the roping. And their daughter is the actually, I think she's the rodeo team president this year. She invited, hey, we're doing military appreciation night. You want to come rope a steer? And I'm like, sure. I haven't spun a steer in like 4 months. Why not do it in front of 15,000 people? So, I mean, that's, you know, if you're the kind of guy who's like, yeah, I'll get in that little spacesuit. And how many motors? Oh, just one? Sure, why not? Cross the ocean? Okay. I get out there and
so talk about that. I mean, how cool is that to get to go and talk?
It really was.
A bunch of college kids, and then that night at the rodeo.
Yeah. So
that was a cool experience. You sent me the videos, but I want the audience to hear about. I mean, that was a pretty cool speech. But then to be able to, you literally that night brought the frickin' crowd to their frickin' feet, man. It was rad. So cool.
If ever I didn't want to miss one in my life, I think it was that one. I mean, oh my God, And the announcer's such a great dude. He's from Wyoming, and I think he's up from like Lander and or the Wind River area. And he kept building me up and I'm like, dude, tone it down a little, you know.
Sound like me talking crap in my clinic.
Here
he comes. Here he comes.
Yeah, he's like, oh, he's a ranch boy. He's really been taking his roping seriously. I'm like, oh God. So, so first they had the national anthem. I came out there and applied. I told them they wanted me to be in uniform. I said the best time I give you is a flight suit and my leather jacket. I mean, I'm not putting on the formal stuff anymore, but I'll do that. So I came out in a flight suit and they played a pretty, you know, a nice video. It kind of told me briefly my story, and then so I go out there and. I mean, I'm on a borrowed horse. I've never been on, and this, you know, this horse ended up being awesome. I mean, he put me right where I needed to be, but he was one of those horses that could not sit still for 3 seconds. I don't know if somebody's been running barrels on him for 5, but I mean, everybody else is leaning over their saddle horns, enjoying and I'm just like spinning. So he's just like dancing around. I'm like, good Lord, I don't know how this is going to go. So they finally wheel me into the box. They bring a steer back, and they get a kid from San Luis Obispo, the rodeo kid. And they're like, okay, now Cap Hornbuckle's going to rope one. And he's just going on and on. And I ride out, and man, that steer was a runner, but that horse he got out good. And I took 3 or 4 good swings, and when I saw that loop was actually on the horns, I mean, Ed McMahon could have been at my front, with the big check, and I would not have been as happy as when I saw
awesome, man. It was
that
awesome.
happen.
It was that camaraderie of this country to where the guy that freaking did such great things did something good in the arena, and everyone got to be able to say,
the crowd lost.
They got to say thank you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was so cool. It was just brought the crowd to their feet.
And then that kid rides in there and just scoops him up and double hawks. And I was like, thank you.
It was awesome,
so,
man.
yeah.
It was one of them things when you showed me the video, you sent it to me, man. It brought freaking the back of my hair and the next.
But I really felt like we tapped into something there.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're right. I mean, the rodeo crowd, especially. I mean, a lot of great Americans want to say thank you, but particularly the rodeo crowd really appreciates the military, and to feel like they're a part of it, together, it was perfect.
So that is perfect, because that is exactly what I want my military event to be in Fort Worth and over there at NRS. And so you just having you there at the gala your story is so good. And I've heard so many people have talked about how they've heard your story and how inspiring it is. And so anyone, love to invite you to our gala. So Liberty and Loyalty Foundation, get on our website. There's tickets available for our gala. That way you can come and listen to your story, Todd, because you just kind of tapped into it a little bit, but I've heard so many people talk about how great this story is. So I'd love to be able to have them just come in there and be in person and see all the other things that we have available in stories and auction items and just the experience of it.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to hear your
story.
And
I hope that people take something away from my story beyond just that it's my story, because really my story is one of so many stories like mine that our military, you have to be careful to get too caught up into everything you hear and read, because our military still produces some amazing men and women that have sacrificed in ways that are sometimes unimaginable. And when someone hears my story, I hope they think of not just me, but how many others that have served it. Because, my injuries, although I was on active duty, weren't even the result of a combat injury. We have a lot of guys that are hurt just like me that were, under fire. And I think it's important to be reminded of, what are you paying for where are your tax dollars going? What is your military doing? Well, hear a story like mine and know that these are the kind of stories that are out there. And the guys and gals that are coming to the American Hero Celebration, and not just military guys. I mean, we got policemen that walk up on a car at 2 a.m. and
look how bad that's
somebody puts a bullet in them.
Exactly right.
And firemen that crawl out of a burning building and I know their plight. So these are the type of people that aren't, they're just like me. They're not out there trying to hawk their story, but they're doing this for all of us, and to come be a part of that, I think it's pretty cool.
So one of the other things too is it was what you were talking about is what my next goal is. Like, this is my goal. This has been an articulate way for me to kind of get experimental in things that I've got to do while you guys are fighting for my freedom. Like, all right, how do I give you guys the things that I got to experience because it was so cool?
Yeah.
You know, like when you make
Yeah.
the NFR showdown
Yeah.
this year, we're going to have our back number ceremony at our gala. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
Because that was the biggest
Right.
deal for me, was to be able to get a back number.
Right.
All right. Well, now the next day, if you're in the top 15 after your first 3 rounds of the military first responder pro open or first responder open, now you get to go to the NFR showdown.
Yeah.
Where now you get to ride behind your branch flags, just like we got
Yeah.
to do. It's a big freaking deal, you know. My goal this year is I just hope that we can get some people, that enough people to come to the NFR showdown on Sunday, November 10th at Cowtown Coliseum,
Yeah.
because when the guy that runs up there ropes 2 horns and turns that steer off and gets some dubs on the back end and gets finished off right there and they win that roping, I want them to hear that crowd of what
Yeah.
you just talked about.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing cooler at the NFR was when you just tattoo one right there and just run through
Right.
one and the freaking 18,000 people over your head just roar.
Yeah.
You can't pay for that, man.
Oh,
Mark
yeah.
Cuban will never hear that
Yep.
because, like, that's something you just, I mean, it's you can't pay for it.
Yeah.
And to be able to give you guys that experience like you experienced in San Luis, like that's what I want for the NFR showdown.
Absolutely.
So, like, say anybody wants to come to this event, I'm telling you, man, it's so fun. It's so cool. Hopefully we got maybe a guest big time guy.
Oh,
Don't
yes.
drop his name. Drop his
All
name
right.
because we're still
All
we're
right.
still tickling the ivory right here. I think it's going to happen, but I'm not going to guarantee it. But there might
All
be
right.
one huge country singer that might be headed that way to rope in the NFR showdown, and he gets to pick whoever he wants to rope with. But we're hoping that happens. I'm not guaranteeing it right now. We're
All
not
right.
dropping no names, but to get you guys to where you get that feeling, because that one was so cool. You got to experience in San Luis. Now I want to get to where we get 15 other teams to be able to experience the same thing.
I'm right there with you. I think that in a way, I think it's the least we could do for. I'm not even speaking personally, but the least we could do for a lot of these guys and gals that have
Well,
served.
just speak for yourself. I mean, heck, you made the NFR showdown last year. How
Yeah.
cool is that?
It was
because
cool.
you get to rope in a situation. I mean, that's the Thomas and Mack.
Yeah.
Same box, same width, dang near
Right.
same length. So I mean, like, what
Yeah.
was that like to be able to back in the box and get that feeling like
Yeah,
that was the NFR?
And, you know, my horse even felt it. I'd never
I'll
seen.
bet.
He couldn't.
I'll bet.
That the music was just like cranking, and I'm trying to, be cool, but he could feel it.
Cool
I know.
like Fonzie.
Yeah.
Cool like Fonzie.
Be cool, man. Don't run this for us. He's like, dude, what are you doing? Why your legs feel like that? So, but yeah, it was awesome. I mean, we don't have to talk about the fact that I waved off. That's not what's important.
the experience. It's
Yeah.
the experience.
But
you know what I'm saying?
I've forgotten about it. I
Right.
don't even think about how I waved off and could have
Right.
won $25,000. I don't even
Dude,
know.
this year's gonna be 30 grand.
Wow.
30 grand to win that thing, a team. How cool. And I guarantee you, I'm going to have back numbers. I guarantee you I get all 15 back numbers sold. I will get that done. I've got so many things done with this deal. I'm going to get that done.
Well,
I get all
don't doubt
15.
you.
I'll get all 15 back numbers sold, sponsored, and I promise you we'll have 60,000 added for this year's for military first responder open. How rank is that going to be?
Yeah, well, I just I hope I'm sure they do, but I hope most of the people listening have an appreciation for what you've done with this thing that started as a small gaggle of guys in your driveway. And here, let me say another thing, because it was brought to my attention that somebody made a comment to a friend of mine who's like, yeah, I just came back from this deal in Texas that Charlie does, and it's awesome. And somebody's like, yeah, he does pretty good off of that deal. And my buddy was like, he doesn't get a penny from that deal. And I know you don't ever say that, but it needs to be said that you don't get a dime from this thing. That this is because you love your country, and
I love my guys.
you love the guys and gals who serve it, and that's pretty awesome. So
Well, I appreciate you guys, man. We wouldn't be where we are today without you.
Yeah.
And I love this country. And no, it's a nonprofit. There's no one on a salary.
Yeah.
This is all out of the fact of I feel like the Western industry appreciates you guys because we get to do what we get to do.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have that freedom without you guys.
yeah,
And, the police officers and first responders, they keep us safe. They're the first persons we call when things go south.
yeah,
And if it wasn't for y'all, who knows what language we'd be speaking.
That's right.
And so,
That's right.
I love this country, and I'm going to do everything I can to keep it how it is, and to appreciate you guys and men and women that keep us safe in our streets and things like that. Like, hell yeah, I'm going to keep fighting for it.
Well,
so I'm telling you, I'm going to have the baddest freaking military first responder open that there is.
Well, yeah, I think you've done that, and it's exciting to see each year it just keeps growing.
Well, I tell you what, this is what I also want people to understand too, is the military first responder pro roping. Who did you draw last year?
Well, a guy who's not, I mean, he's okay. If, just junior together. He's,
how much fun was it to see that guy behind you?
I still remember
pipes.
Somebody comes up to me and they're like, nice, dude, you got junior. I'm like, whatever. Like, I thought they were just messing with me, And then I was like, holy shit, he's over there. He's
what
about
was
to
that like?
Well, I didn't think I didn't think a steer could be roped that quick. I'm like, remember the old 486 computers in now like a super processor world? I'm like calculating things that like, okay, slack, now turn left. And already from across the arena, I'm hearing face, Todd, face. I'm like, huh? What face already?
Who was hollering that?
It happened it happened so quick. I'm like, seriously? Yeah, it happened fast.
That was so much fun. I was chasing behind you. And because I knew you'd get a little distracted after you turned your steer, and I knew how fast you were going to heal. So
holy
I'm hollering,
cow.
Step 2,
Yes.
your finish.
It's like putting a middle school quarterback into an NFL football play,
So
You're
fast,
like,
isn't it?
Like the old time, where'd who go?
Exactly.
I'm like, what?
Exactly.
Face already?
It is, man. It's so ranked back there when you get it. That's what's so cool about when you guys get to experience like that top level.
Yeah.
Because I know you guys appreciate it because every one of you guys have been at the top level in so many different things. And
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I really appreciated about it, and now that I've been back a couple of times, I start to see the same guys a couple times, and I realized just what a great group of guys. Junior came and rode up next to me and just chat for a while. He didn't have to do that, and he's tired. He's on the road all the time. He's got a rope the next morning. He could have just been like, let me just get this done, But no, he came up and chatted with me, and all those guys were. I very much got the sense that they were there because they really, appreciated it as much as anyone.
Yeah.
And so I think it's cool. I mean, yeah, to get to rope with people that are at that level, it's really neat.
Yeah, it is. It's fun, man. It's one of the things that I thought that would be such a good add-on to be able to experience a lot of the things that a lot of civilians don't get to feel. They don't know what it's like to get a chance to open what an NFR setup is. A lot of guys don't get a chance to see what it's like to
have you pulled backwards off your horse because you should have faced already, and you're still
exactly
pointing at 90
Those are
degrees,
great experiences.
pointing across the Sure.
Exactly.
No, it was and then I'm trying to remember who I roped with last year. Oh man, I'm blanking, but it was a really good time. Last year was even more busy because how many teams showed up?
A lot. It was a big deal last year.
Yeah, it was like over 250 teams or something, right?
Yeah, we actually outgrew the one day. So this year we've extended another day. So on Friday will be our open roping that morning, sponsored by Classic and Imus Ranch. And so that one will have 20,000 added. And so it's going to be a big deal. We're going to have a lot of big open ropers there. It's going to be 10,000 added for the open roping, 10,000 added for the non-NFR qualifiers. That way it gets everybody there because we're going to give 2 chances away to get somebody to the NFR showdown that didn't make the NFR. So whether you want to have a chance right there to rope in an NFR setup, or if you're 16th and 17th and you need a chance right there to make some of your money back to pay your credit cards. Like I say, we're trying to help the guys right there that are also in that stage right there where they're trying to recoup some money right there just to make a living. And so then also it gets the best guys there in the world to be able to rope in the military first responder pro roping, which will be right after the open roping on Friday. And then our ranch rodeo that night, sponsored by Ariat, is going to be so much fun.
Always a good time.
So much fun. That's where Anheuser-Busch, they donate beer. So we don't sell it. We give it away for donations. Well, those donations help us be able to distribute money along to somebody. Like this year, we were able to help somebody who got cancer. So he got a cancer while he was serving our country. And so we were able to help. We paid for his rent, paid for his truck payments, just eased the pain right there while he was going through some of the surgeries.
Oh, I know from personal experience that I couldn't imagine having gone through what I went through, and then to also be juggling, how am I going to pay my mortgage or put shoes on my kids, those kind of worries. So yeah, that's doing the Lord's work.
Yeah.
Right.
So we have some other ways, like say where we try to distribute to where, like say, we're not trying to get too wide because we're not big enough, but we're also trying to stay within the community where we're able to help our own. And so that's one of the things that we do right there through that ranch rodeo, which those guys in the ranch rodeo, those top 4 teams, they'll advance to the NFR showdown on Sunday because that's our entertainment, man. That is some of the fun.
Oh yeah.
Golly. That's
the Crash Derby there. That's
And then Saturday, that's where we're going to have the military first responder open, which is sponsored by Kinetic Vet and Signature Hospital Equine. And that's where it's going to be huge, man. It's going to pay $15,000 a man, $30,000 a team. And then that night's our gala, which you're going to be speaking at, just 8 miles down the road. So it's going to be real handy. Everyone there that made the NFR showdown. That's our back number ceremony. Like I said, we almost got our back numbers sold. We're getting close. So anyone wants to sponsor a back number, Liberty and Loyalty Foundation, get on there. There's a spot right there where you can sponsor, or there's still spots available too, where if you want to, I think like maybe our replay for the NFR showdown, there's a spot there available. You get your logo right there on the instant replay. It'll be on the live on the Cowboy channel, all that stuff. There's still spots available if you still want to sponsor. But I'm going to get the back number sold for you guys. I promise you, man. There's going to be, that thing's going to have 60,000 added for that military first responder rep.
Well, you just reminded me of another cool thing that, along the lines of to get to experience something that most people don't. So last year I got to rope on the Cowboy channel, and so I had been, I just got back to Delta. In fact, I did one of my training trips out of training for Delta a week before I flew to Incheon, Korea, and then boogied back to just in time to speak for Sons of the Flag in Dallas, and then had like 4 days. I stayed down in Weatherford, and then for the AC. So I had my daughter had burned up all her time to be away, because she came to be at the Sons of the Flag speak. Because it's cool when she's there, and she'll be there at the gala. Because I found that when I tell my story, one of the first things that people always want, like, well, how's your daughter now?
That's exactly right.
And I'm like, well, look at her.
Well, she's sticking steers is what she's doing.
She's out roping her dad, and that's
damn right.
And I'm pretty happy about that.
Dang right.
But she's maybe a little too pretty for her own good. So I'm like, but they want to come. It's cool, and it's fun to see the smile on her face when people. I've seen a line of people waiting to talk to her. And so anyway, her and Tamara weren't able to be there last year because they had just come to Dallas the week before for the Sons of the Flag talk, and Madeline had to be back at school. So, but they got to sit home and watch me rope on TV on the Cowboy channel. And now, I mean, if somebody would have told me 15 years ago, hey, and your wife and daughter will be roping, I'm like, what kind of crazy? How? How is that going to happen? But it did. It's pretty cool.
It's pretty dang cool where the guys get a chance to be on the Cowboy channel.
Yeah.
And this year we're going to have a broadcast. Like this year's NFR Showdown, sponsored by Imus Ranch. This is going to be brought to you by Chase Bank. It's going to be such a cool event.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To have guys broadcasting it to where we've missed so many good stories because, it was just a live event. And so when that happens is like, commercial breaks is when we present our home. This is going to be our 5th home we've helped build for Building Homes for Heroes. And so this year we'll have people down on the ground interviewing that person to be able to talk about what it's like to get that home, what it means to them. Brotherhood for the Fallen. We're able to honor the families of the people that have been murdered tragically in the line of duty, and those families. I mean, they sacrifice,
right? Yeah.
So we're able to be able to honor those families, live on the event and stuff. And so we're going to be able to sell the events in such a better way where you can get the feel of what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, I remember last year when you presented the home to that family and seeing that guy's wife in tears, and if there was a dry eye in that room, then I don't want to know who that commie bastard is, but it was real. It was real. Pretty awesome.
Stuff ain't staged, man. This is real life stuff, and to be able to feel like when we're down on this earth, to be able to make things to where you feel God's presence, where you're feeling like you're helping do God's work, that's part of the men that we're trying to be. And so when you're talking about when you're able to tell your story and be the man that you want to be, and because to be the man that you want to be is to be for your daughter, the husband that she wants to seek.
Exactly.
Be that poor sumbitch.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my dad freaking put his life on the line for me. Yeah. What the hell are you going to do?
Yeah.
So you've raised the standards for that, for your daughter to be able to try to find the best man out there that she can find. And, it's fun to be able to get around men, guys that are trying to be the best people they can be. And
I also knew, I knew it wasn't going to be lost on her that she's watching her mom pour out her heart and soul into me and stand by me. And so then what I bail out on that, what would that have taught her about, how, I would imagine she would have been like, well, what's the point? Some guy's not even going to, I wanted her to know that, a real man recognizes that when someone does that and you cherish that and you make good on it somehow.
Because we've been dealing with suicide with some of our guys out there and stuff. And we had a few guys lined up to come and do a grand entry deal at Fort Worth a few years ago. And some of them we've lost because of suicide.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
That's one of those things to where, man, like what we're trying to do with this foundation is have enough events where they have things to look forward to. And, not trying to get into too much of my personal life, but, growing up, I did struggle with suicide. I struggled with things to where they were so bad, that was the worst thing that I've ever dealt with. And so I didn't know how to make it stop. So I thought, there's only one way to make this pain stop. Yeah. Well, when you have kids, it totally changes. Yeah. There's not one time that thought ever crosses my mind anymore. Not one time. Because there's no way that now I have something to live for.
Yeah.
That golden idol of being able to just be the top roper in the world, that's way different now when you have kids. Not one time now would I ever think about that ever again. Because like for me, it's like, how do I raise a man?
Yeah.
How do I raise a daughter?
Right.
And so like so many guys, that we're struggling with we want to keep them alive. And I get where there's sometimes where it's like, it would be easier if they didn't have me. Or could you become the man that they need?
Yeah.
And to me, if you look at it that way, gosh dang it, we need you here.
Yeah.
Don't look at it that way, man. We need you here. Be the man you want your kids to be. Be the man that you want your daughter to marry. And to me, if you look at it that way, we're going to have so many more guys still here. That's my opinion.
Suicide is a tough one because it's one of those things where oftentimes if there can be just one thing that gets introduced, it can change the whole trajectory of it, and usually it happens in a place where no one's aware. Like the first reaction uses, I had no idea. I had no idea that guy was dealing with that.
Internalized it too much and they couldn't get it out.
And if they had, they would. Well, so what's the solution to that? Well, I think it's things like this that we don't know. We don't know. You don't know which guys coming to the AHC might be dealing with that or not, right? How can you? But it's more like a shotgun. But if I get enough of them there, chances are you're going to be the thing that is introduced into someone's life that changes that. I mean, there's a chance, right? Anytime we can reach out to veterans, first responders, those types, and get them doing things that might give them another outlet, there's a chance that we're reaching one of those types. I know in my personal experience that the first time, I've told you this a little bit before, but I went to Black Mountain Ranch in Colorado. I didn't even want to go. Bail Veterans Program calls me up. We're in the Fisher House. I'm in the full burn gear. It's like leotard. It's a head to toe, spandex type stuff. I'm opioids to the gills, and they're like, we want to send you to this dude ranch in Colorado. I'm like, dude, I'm a ranch kid. When somebody just saddled my horse, that will make me feel great about myself. Can't even saddle my own horse anymore. Some, handsome cowboy is going to be showing my wife around. Like, no, this is a nightmare scenario. But I watched the video. And I'm like, this place is gorgeous. And it looked kind of legit. Like, this looks kind of cowboy. Like, they might do some legit stuff here. Well, I go there, and first night, I meet the guy who does all their cattle classes. And he's an avid roper, like, he used to be like a, lazy hawk kind of guy. And he sees me roping the dummies. He's like, hey, you've done that before. And I tell him my story. He's like, well, this is an easy one. We got to get you roping again. I'm like, oh, okay. So all week long. And by Thursday, he's got me roping the Helimatic. And then on Friday, they bring in a bunch of local ropers. They put on a little performance for the guests. And he throws me on his head horse, and they have me go rope a steer, which I thought was going a million miles an hour. I've watched that video since. That might be the slowest steer in North America. I'm like, it looks like that scene from Austin Powers where the steamroller's coming at him, right. And he's like, stop. But when I hooked up on that steer and turned it, like 3 things happened. One, I knew everything was going to be different. I'm like, if I can do this again, I can go fly jets again. I got this. I'm going to be okay. My wife saw that, and she's like, he's going to be okay. I got my husband back. And maybe most importantly, my kids saw that. And they went from seeing a guy who'd been laying around in and out of hospital beds for 18 months to a guy spinning a steer. And they went, oh, Dad's back. And everything changed. I think I was off all the opioids within 6 months of that. Back in the weight room, all my problems weren't solved. That's never going to be the case. But things were different. And I think that's what, hopefully guys coming out to the AHC haven't experienced. My hope as a member, as one of your ambassadors, my hope for this organization is that people have an experience like I did.
Yeah, me too.
Where it changes the trajectory for them.
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate your story. I appreciate who you are. I'm glad to have you. We're so blessed. Our associated so blessed to have you as an ambassador. And, the story that you tell and the things that people need to hear, because there's so many people that have experienced what you've experienced. And, we don't only invite just people that rope that are military and first responders. We invite everybody.
Yeah.
If you don't rope, please just come. More than likely, please come to our gala. Please come to the NFR Showdown.
Yeah.
If you're a military first responder, we've got free tickets for you. Figure out how to subscribe. There's a deal on the Liberty and Loyalty Foundation where if you're a military first responder, there's a free ticket for you. We want you to come. We want to sell this thing out. We want it to where when freaking Todd Hornbuckle backs up there, high call back out there, baby.
Yeah, now
and
you're
all
talking.
you got to do is be 9, and you freaking knock one out in 8-2, and you make that victory lap, and you got the saddles out there from Mail from Elite.
Sweet.
You got the sponsors out there. You got me interviewing you live on the Cowboy Channel where you get the experience that no one else has had.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what is just, you can't put a price on that. That experience to me is what I want these guys to be able to have a chance to have. And like I said, that's what my dream was behind this is, me and my wife kind of wrote this down on a napkin one day as we were eating lunch. And so to be able to see where it's come now and the guys that I've got to meet, man, it's been a true blessing. It's been one of those things where I truly feel where God's put this on my heart to where, you can feel why we're down here.
Yeah.
It's not about us. Is there things that we can do for other people? And it's been cool. And I'm not trying to brag about this at all, but I give all the credit to God and the fact that, he was able to use my ability to be able to, my job now is to, who now can I inspire to where either we're keeping them alive or we're giving them experience or, just golly, not only that, but the guys I've got to meet, there's been some fabulous, fantastic guys that I've got to meet that I would have never met if it wasn't for this.
No.
And this it's a true blessing for me and my family.
Well, you think about the men and women whose lives that you affect, but then it's like an exponential thing because think about how much better my family's life is from the moment I spun that steer in Colorado, right? It made my life a lot better, of course, but my daughter roping today, you saw her.
Oh my gosh,
she's
that's so cool.
doing,
Madeline was spinning them off.
Yeah, she's doing
and
so
putting
good.
the old jelly on the biscuit. Right? Hell, I could have healed them. Todd, I could have healed those steers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were nice. Beautiful.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
And my wife's life and my older two kids' life, all of it from that one moment.
Yeah.
And so I think, creating those kind of moments is what this is all about. And
oh man, you're
I'm
truly
honored to be a part
inspiring.
of it.
You're truly inspiring. You're a great guy, man. You light up the room everywhere you go, man. Just your attitude and how you deal with life, and man, I just appreciate you taking the time to be on this podcast. I appreciate you being a part of our foundation, and I can't wait to see you on Sunday, man.
Well,
November 10th.
Thanks for having me, Charlie. Thanks for everything you do.
Appreciate it, partner.
Awesome.
All right, buddy. Later.
See you soon.